All right, just continuing with the story. So, as I said, everything kind of fell apart because I really wanted basketball videos of when I was younger. And I just figured that out in college. Like I said before this, I never knew wanted basketball videos because everything I did was unconscious. And I didn't even know that looking at the videos would help my shot, would fix it. And now my grandpa and them, they might not realize, like, when I study what I did, because I was unconscious, I did things that nobody did. These skipping things, these foot dragging things. I'm not going to go into details because I don't want to make good players think. But I really wanted to get the video so I can study what I did, because in order to reduplicate it, you have to do exactly what you did. Now, my grandpa might not believe it because at this time when I was in Kauai, I hadn't really fixed my shot. Because hold on. Because I had, I had a few videos, but I didn't really study them in depth. And like I said, I had very few videos to begin with. My dad didn't record because he wanted to watch, and he couldn't watch and record at the same time. And my mom didn't record because she had anxiety and she didn't want to make mistakes. So the problem was, like, I wanted to get the videos, more videos, and I had some good videos, but like I said, a lot of them were lost when my friend tried to steal my car. So I barely had any videos, but at this time, I didn't really study the videos too much in depth to see how I shot and really reduplicate exactly what I did when I was younger. And I was still doing something very wrong. I wish I could tell you what I was doing that was extremely wrong. But it was something that my dad had told me to do when I shot. And I only fixed this when I was playing with Compton College in 2019. And it was only when I was playing with Compton College in 2019 that I really started studying in depth, in detail, and reduplicating exactly how I moved into shots, what I did. And now people won't believe it, that really shooting is all about, if you do exactly what you did when you were making all the shots when I was unconscious, then you'll shoot good. Now, like I said, I know that the problem was when I got the shoot away machine, I started shooting, and I have the videos, and I'm shooting exactly like I'm picking the ball off a rack, and it's making me do the exact wrong thing. Made my shot get messed up. Now, my grandpa would say, no, well, if you're in the flow, even if you're picking the ball off a rack, you would still have a good shot. No, he doesn't know basketball. He doesn't know that the good shooter, and I was a better shooter than all the good shooters now. Like, I was considered one of the best in the nation, maybe the best. And it was exceptional. Now, he doesn't know that because he didn't see me then. But if you reduplicate exactly what you did, the way that you move into it, then you will make the shots. It's like magic. And I figured that out when I was playing with Compton College in 2019. Now, at this time, when I was playing in Kauai, my shot was still messed up because I was still doing the wrong thing. And I didn't have my videos, and I wasn't really studying them in depth because they're at my grandma's house in Los Angeles. I didn't want to bring them to Kauai and lose them. So anyways, my point is, though, I really wanted to get videos. And as I said, I wanted my mom and dad to help me get the videos, maybe talk to people who I played basketball with, and, help to get more basketball videos and stuff, but they wouldn't help me. They didn't want to talk to me. They wouldn't, and when I was in Kauai, they wouldn't talk to me. Nothing was going on. So then when, and I'm trying to talk to my mom. So when I get back from Kauai, I'm trying to say, I'm telling my grandma, can I talk to mom and dad? So my grandma talks to my mom, and my mom was like, that she wouldn't talk to me. So I said, okay, well, can we get like a psychologist that can mediate between us so I could talk to mom and dad with the psychologist? So my grandma talks to my mom, and my mom says, your mom isn't going to talk to you, but she says that she will get you a psychiatrist because you're mentally ill. She thought I was mentally ill, but I wasn't mentally ill. I'd never been diagnosed as mentally ill. She just wouldn't talk to me. So she says, no, I'll get you a psychiatrist. So that was when, when I threw a beanbag, and then my dad ended up coming from his house and ended up grabbing me and telling me that I had to live in San Diego. So he just came and said, okay, you have to move to San Diego, live with your uncle and aunt. And I want to talk to my dad, but he wouldn't talk to me. So this is what's going on this time. And I want to talk to my mom and dad, but they won't talk to me. But as I said, when I was on Kauai, that was when I was a leftist. I was a communist. I was anti, religion. I thought it was white supremacist. I thought religion was white supremacist. And, and my grandpa, I thought he was a white supremacist because he seemed a little bit religious. He seemed to be a little more right-wing to me. And I thought that he was just a white supremacist. When I got back from Kauai and I was staying, when I first got back to Los Angeles, I went to stay with my grandpa in Malibu for a second, but then he forced me to live with my grandma in Granada Hills because because he didn't want me to stay there because I had my friend Noah from Oakland come and stay with me for a little bit. And my grandpa didn't want my friend Noah there because my grandpa said, you're just, I'm not going to enable you guys and let you guys not work. And again, I'm thinking to myself, yep, white supremacist. He's white supremacist. He just is all into working. And because that's to keep the system going because, see, I was still a communist at that point, right? Just to keep the system going and everything. But as I said, at this time also, I was starting to move away from being a communist and a leftist to becoming more right-winger because I started looking at all the rap music that was coming out or just all the music in general that seemed to me like there was a race mixing agenda going on. And I started, and when I was coaching basketball, like I started to notice that the white kids had more swag flow. I'm not going to talk about what that is, but I started noticing that when I was on Kauai. And I started to feel bad about, me being a leftist, and I started feeling bad for the white people and the race mixing agenda. And I was like, there does seem to be like a Illuminati anti-religion race mixing agenda. And I was a part of that. And I was like, the white supremacists are actually right. They're actually accurate in their analysis of what's going on. So this is what's going on at this time. And as I said, also, I was kicked off INTP Central, and on INTP Central, I was an extreme leftist. So let me just give some examples of my anti-white leftist stuff that I would talk about on INTP Central. One thing was I wrote one time how the Greeks that the people who say that the Greeks were great philosophers and they think that Greeks were white. I was like, no, they're more Middle Eastern. They're more Ionian, which is more like Middle Eastern, because I was anti-white and I wanted to not make the white supremacists feel superior. So I'm like, yeah, no, they're actually more brown and. Because everything I did was anti-white and I was against the, and I was for me, it was coming out of college and my whole life I was this way. I was like, yeah, it's just privilege and, social capital and cultural capital that gives white people the advantage and, all that. And I remember though, at the time, some black people were writing on Facebook and stuff yeah, it's just cultural capital and, white people have advantage, but they're not really smarter than us and stuff. And at first I agreed with that, but then I started to question and I started to think, wait, there's a race mixing agenda, and I started feeling bad for white people. And, before I was always against IQ. I thought that IQ was culturally biased and all that. I was anti-white, and I thought that IQ was a white supremacist thing. But then I started to, question this. So as I said, I'm moving from left-wing anti-white to more right-wing pro-white. And but then I was kicked off of INTP Central when I was a leftist on it, but I had started to become a little right-wing. That's why I was kicked off. And yeah, so I shifted when I was on Kauai. So when I get back to Los Angeles, for the first time, I'm shifting to right-wing, but I still hadn't really articulated it yet. I hadn't really expressed it, but I wanted to talk to my mom and dad, and I wanted to, see them, and I wanted help. I wanted help get the quadrant model out. I wanted help just in general, and I wanted to talk to them. So, like I said, I asked my grandma, can you ask mom and dad if they could talk to me? So my grandma says, well, your mom said I said, can we get a psychologist to mediate between us? My grandma says, no, your mom said that she'll get a psychiatrist. She's not going to talk to you. She'll get a psychiatrist for you. So again, they're pushing me to the side. They just basically dehumanized me. They said, okay, he's just mentally ill. Just forget him. We don't need to talk to him. We don't need to think, to associate with him. Just throw him out of our lives. And I was upset because I felt like this was what my grandpa kind of wanted. He wanted to force me to be independent, have them kick me out of their life, right? And I thought that my grandpa was a little bit of a white supremacist, more right-winger, right? But so now at this point, I start questioning well, maybe if I become a right-winger, maybe my dad will talk to me, because I always thought that my dad was a little bit of a right-winger. So I was like, yeah, maybe if I do that. And then, like I said, I wanted the basketball videos. And when I was a leftist, I felt like I screwed things up because I wanted the basketball videos, and I kind of, I wanted my mom and dad to help me get them, but my mom and dad wouldn't talk to me. And then to try to get them, I wrote all that stuff on Facebook, on my leftist ideas, to try to make people think I was really smart and a genius, and they would give me the basketball videos. And like I said, my mom hid all that stuff. So I had a ton of stuff written, and it got more and more bizarre because no one was responding to it. But I didn't realize my mom was hiding it. Then I unhid all of it. Then people started seeing it, and people who said that they were going to give me basketball videos, then all of a sudden they started saying, wait, actually, Ryan, I don't have the basketball videos. And I think it was because I was such a leftist, and I was a communist and anti-religion, anti-Christianity, because I thought I was white supremacist. And then they started seeing that, and a lot of my friends, I think, were kind of Christian, right? Or, they more religious, or at least, I was acting, so anti-religion, and, my grandpa would say I had expressed dualistic software. So, yeah, but everything backfired, like I said. And then I was kicked off INTP Central, and on INTP Central, I had all my leftist communist ideas, where basically my thesis was, religion is just a form of Darwinism where different ethnic groups choose different religions in order to maintain their ethnic purity and their ethnic genetic tribal genes and stuff. And I thought it was just white supremacist. I thought that religion at its core was just white supremacist, and it's to maintain borders and boundaries, to maintain the white supremacist hierarchy. And you see that with like Hinduism, where the Brahmins were the quote unquote white people, right? Or the lighter skinned, and it maintains caste structures. And I thought that religion was just white supremacist. So I was a communist, and I was against religion. Now I realize that that's what the Hindus, they Shukracharya, Satan, the planet Venus for the Hindus, is like what I was. He was like a communist who was anti-religion. And that's what I was at this time. And I was anti-Christianity. So I think that I was very satanic at this time. So then when I get back to, like I said, I get back to Los Angeles, and all this stuff is falling apart. I wanted basketball videos. Now my friends are saying they don't have the basketball videos. I'm starting to think, well, maybe it's because I was a communist, and they now know I'm a communist, and maybe it all backfired. I sort of wanted to express my communist ideas to make them think I'm smart and make them even maybe intimidated by me and want to give me basketball videos, but it all backfired. Everything backfired. And I needed support. Now, it would have been helpful if I had my mom and dad's support or anybody's support, but no one was talking to me. They wouldn't talk to me. They threw me to the side. They said, you're mentally ill. We don't want anything to do with you. I wasn't mentally ill. But but like I said, my grandpa was like, well, you need to just become independent. And once you're independent, then you'll let go of your quadrant model idea, because he thought that it was just a strategy for me to keep my parents, stay dependent on my parents. Really, it would have been so helpful if my parents would have just talked to me and would have treated me normally. All this crazy stuff wouldn't have happened. I wouldn't have been on Kauai. I wouldn't have been on writing all this stuff on INTP Central. If they just would have talked to me. And I wanted to go back into college. I wanted to get a master's degree or something. But they wouldn't talk to me. And then my mom wouldn't help me. And my grandpa was like, well, if you want to get a master's degree, then just get a job. Then get a job yourself. Why are you depending on your mom and dad? And again, I thought this was, at that time, I was like, well, you're just a white supremacist. You're all about getting jobs. And that's like a white supremacy thing. And I was a communist. I was anti-jobs. It's just the whole system's corrupt, right? That's the way I was. But, I was just like, I discovered a theory of everything. I would like my mom, who's always helped me, to help me get into college. My grandpa was like, no, you need to become independent. And that's what this whole quadrant model thing is. You're just trying to stay dependent, and you're using this as a strategy to stay dependent. So if you want to go to college, if you want to go to get a master's degree, get a job. And I'm like, but the thing is, I'm a 5W4 Enneagram. I don't want to waste my time getting a job. I just want to get into school and keep studying, keep getting the quadrant model going. But no one was helping me, and my grandpa was forcing me to be independent. And I felt a lot of resentment and anger toward him for doing this. So now I'm in Los Angeles. And like I said, I was a leftist at first, but then I started to switch. And remember, this is when not George Floyd, but this was when like the Michael Brown and the Black Lives Matter riots started happening. And might have been even contributed by me, by my communist stuff, maybe even contributed to that stuff. I don't know. It's possible. But, so now I'm in Los Angeles, and at that time, I was very much of a communist, but then I started to switch, and I started to feel bad for white people. I was first a communist, anti-white, and I started becoming a right-winger a little bit, and I started becoming pro-white, and I started being like, wait, maybe my whole life has been a lie. And like, remember I said when I went to Israel, they were against the communists, and I'm starting to think like, maybe they're right. Like maybe, maybe nationalism is good, and maybe, religion is good. I was anti-religion, and I started becoming pro-religion. I started becoming pro-white, and I started to think like, maybe my whole life has been a lie, and maybe my whole life I've been going the wrong path. So I switched, and I started to become right-wing. And to make it to get really abstract, another thing was like I said, I was kicked off INTP Central, and they kicked me off, but they wouldn't let me go back on to delete all my communist stuff. So now I had all this communist stuff on INTP Central, all this anti-white stuff, basically describing how religion is just white supremacist, and, it's just genetic Darwinism, and I was anti-religion. Everything is just Darwinism, and there's no such thing as witches. Now I would say maybe there is such thing as witches, right? But at that time I was like, no, there's no such thing as witches. It's just Darwinism. It's just a way for men, patriarchy, to get power and maintain power, and they just believed in witches to maintain solidarity against the brown people, the Indians, in order to maintain their structures of power, which were cemented by religion, which were cemented by the belief in demons and witches. And, that's the type of stuff I was writing on INTP Central, right? Very communist, very anti-religion. But now at this point, I started thinking like, well, maybe religion's right. Maybe I was wrong this whole time being anti-religious and being anti-white. So then I started becoming pro-white. And then, like I said, I had all this communist stuff on INTP Central, and to get very abstract, I started thinking to myself, like, well, maybe if I write on Facebook very pro-white, now right-wing nationalist stuff, it will counterbalance the stuff I have on INTP Central, because I couldn't go on INTP Central and delete the stuff. So like I said, everything went chaotic at this point. Everything was going crazy. And like I said, if my mom and dad would just talk to me, and, if I wouldn't have been like thrown to the side and all this shit, all this stuff maybe not would have happened. But all this crazy stuff, everything was going chaotic and going out of control. So I wanted to counterbalance all this stuff I wrote on INTP Central and say, hey, and then maybe write on Facebook all this naturalist stuff. And to get abstract, I thought like maybe because my grandpa talked about the flow, in the flow there's no one answer. And I thought, well, maybe if I counterbalance the two extremes, like, God is immanent and God is transcendent. You say both of them, and then that gets people to transcend both of those rationalizations, because the truth is beyond reasoning and beyond capacity and your limited understandings, right? So I thought, okay, maybe if I do the two polarities, and on INTP Central I'm a complete communist, and on Facebook I'm a complete nationalist, those will counterbalance, and the truth can emerge from those two extremes, right? So in an abstract way, that's what I thought. But at the same time, it wasn't just that I was like trying to be abstract and like counterbalance my stuff on INTP Central. At the same time, I really did start to become a right-winger, pro-white person, quote-unquote white supremacist. I think I became a white supremacist. And I remember at the time I was looking online and I was like watching stuff on Meir Kahane, and Kahane was like against the Palestinians, right? And remember when I was a communist, I was really pro-Palestinian. And I was like, yeah, nationalism, Israeli nationalism, that's just white supremacy. It's just a way to maintain borders. And why? It's to keep the brown people out, right? So I thought I was really against nationalism, and I hated borders, and I hated Christianity because I thought it maintained borders, and I wanted the Mexicans to overflow America, and I wanted the borders to be gone. I thought that Christianity was just an excuse to keep brown people out, right? Like, oh, they're not Christians, or they commit crimes and stuff. But, I was a communist. So I'm like, well, of course they commit crimes because of colonialism and because the white people did bad stuff, and everything's the white people's fault, right? So, but at this point, I start feeling bad for the white people, and I start questioning all my leftist leanings, right? So I did become more right-wing, and there was that aspect of me where I was like, well, I'll counterbalance all my communist stuff that I wrote before on INTP Central that I can't get down, because remember, they kicked me off and I couldn't take it down. So it was stuck on INTP Central, and I wanted to get it down, but I couldn't. So I thought, okay, I'll counterbalance it on Facebook. But at the same time, it's not just that I was like abstractly, trying to prove, do that, that artistic, creating a polarity so that we can, through the synthesis of the dichotomies, we can come up with a greater synthesis, Hegelian dynamic type of thing. There was that aspect, but also at the same time, I really did start to rebel against my old leftist ways. So I remember like the last thing that happened was I called my friend, or I texted my friend Ronaldo, and I asked him, do you have any basketball videos? And he said no. And I thought, well, maybe because everyone's doing this because they're mad at me for being a communist. And I thought, well, now I'm going to become a right-winger. And I really did start to become a right-winger at this time. So I was like, now I'll become a right-winger. Maybe I'll get my basketball videos. And I thought to myself, too, maybe I'll get power. And when I get power, I will get my basketball videos. Because, like I said, if I study the basketball videos, I can duplicate it. And I did things that nobody does. Nobody NBA players do it. If I could study it, I was incredible. I was considered by many the best in the nation. And people don't realize that. My grandpa wouldn't believe it. And my grandpa wouldn't believe it, too, because like I said, he saw me still shooting at that time, and he saw that I was still shooting bad. So he's like, well, if you had your basketball videos, why are you still shooting bad? It's because at the time I hadn't really, fixed my shot. And still I can't fix it completely. I need to watch more videos. But I'm a lot better now. When I was playing with Compton College, I got a lot better because I started duplicating what I did, more. And I started doing, and I'm not going to get into details, but the way I stepped into it, way that I step and stuff like that, and it really fixes it. And it's like magic. When you do it exactly like you see in the videos, it's like magic. And I want to explain to him and explain to my dad what it is, but I don't want to explain to people because I don't want people to think too much. But there's like magical things I figured out when I was playing with Compton College, and it really makes you make the shots. It's all about that. And when I was younger, I automatically aligned to it because I was unconscious. But now I'm not. My muscle memory's been destroyed by the shoot away. Now I have to look at the videos to fix it. and the best shooters do similar stuff. But anyways, so I started to change. I started to went from a leftist, and I became right wing. And now I'll get into kind of like my movement from left wing to right wing.